It's now time for this big beast of a tool to come into play. This is a torque wrench that Iden has lent us, and these are the instructions that Iden's printed out for us. And the bolts have to be tightened down in a specific sequence, so that one first, that one second. And you go around all the bolts once to this setting on the torque wrench, then you go around the bolts again in sequence with the second setting on the torque wrench. One of the things that we promised ourselves we were going to do once we got to Turkey was to really give some TLC to our dinghy. It's obviously a very important piece of our day-to-day living equipment. It's our car. It brings our groceries home and it gets us from our anchorage to wherever the nearest town is. And over the years that it's been used so far, the UV damage to a particular part of the rubber that goes all the way around the outside of the dinghy is blatantly obvious. Plus the fact that the cost of getting a new cover for it in comparison to the cost of a replacement dinghy, well, it just makes economic sense. So our friend recommended that we use the guy in the marina here, and apparently his work is excellent and his prices are not too bad considering it's a marina price. We've also got the advantage that we have a ton of Sunbrella material that was left over from the original owner of the boat, and they are kind of shades that go around the back, or privacy screens if you like. In the 2.5 years that we've been on the boat, we've never used them. They were just sitting in a locker, and every time we wanted to do any work, they were just another thing to take out of the locker and put back into the locker. So we thought, you know, we'll supply the Sunbrella material, which will bring our costs down, and all we've got to do is basically pay for the few materials that the guy is going to supply, such as Velcro, elastic, plastic zips, and a few other bits and pieces. What we're getting the guy to do is to create some chaps to go all around the outside of the dinghy, which will cover there, and there. They will be velcroed to the inside of the dinghy there, and then on the outside of the dinghy, underneath that particular piece of rubber that runs along the outside, which has been severely damaged by the UV light, there it will be attached there by an elasticated piece of material that will run around the outside. Also, while we're on the subject of covers, we're going to get a cover for our outboard engine, and we've asked the guy also to incorporate the lifting strap into the cover so that we don't have to mess around with the stupid thing that we've got at the moment, which is kind of like a Chinese jigsaw puzzle with a piece missing. It's just impossible to get back on. So that's the cover for that, and the lifting strap onto the outboard engine. Onto our seat. Our seat has fared the worst in the UV degradation stakes. The material is just absolutely useless. I'll zoom in on that for you and you can see the absolute awful state that it's in. That bit there is probably all that's left of the seat material. For some reason known only to the designers of these seat bags at Zodiac, they made all of the zips out of metal instead of plastic, and of course in a saltwater environment doesn't make any sense. They corrode, you can't open them, and of course they start to fall apart. So we're getting a new bag made, a new seat made, so this thing should look schmick as schmick can be by the time we have finished. Well, I've just come down to the shop where the guys are putting the canvas together for the chaps and everything else for the dinghy, and it's coming on fairly good. Just hope they can get it all done by the end of the day. We'll go and check in with them in the office now. It's taken a long time to get the dinghy finally covered with the chaps, an engine cover made, and a new seat and seat bag made, mainly because the guys at Technical Services were, I don't know, quite slow at doing what they were doing. We did originally supply them with all of the blue Sunbrella because we had a lot of it just hanging around the boat. They have done a great job putting all of that together and fitting around the various handles and parts of the dinghy that need to be exposed. They've done some nice leather here. It looks pretty good. They've done a great job of making it fit nicely. The seat cushion, however, is a little bit of a disappointment. We asked them to make this hanging bag underneath where we can stow things, and they've made the bag to fit obviously inside the dinghy itself, but then they've made the seat cover almost the same size as the bag, so it's actually short by that much. So disappointing. Now you could say, well, send it back to them and ask them to make another one, but the time it's taken to get here, and I'm talking months, it's just like, I've given up now. I'm not going to get involved. So the seat is a bit of a disappointment. Moving on to the engine cover. They took a long time getting this all sorted out, and we did initially ask them to include sewn in a proper lifting strap so that we can lift the engine off the back of the dinghy using the davits on the back end of ABC. And they hummed and hawed and said because of the shape of the engine it wasn't possible to put a lifting strap on this engine, which is an absolute fallacy because we've had a lifting strap on the engine. And I took our lifting strap to them and said, look, you know, can you put this on the engine and make it work somehow and then stitch it into the cover? Well, I don't think they've even made an attempt at doing that. So again, disappointing, and after months and months, I'm just giving up. They still have the lifting strap, so I've got to walk over there and pick that up at some point and just attempt to put it on myself. It looks great and it offers great protection to a very expensive dinghy.
Let's talk price.
Remembering we supplied all of this umbrella, which is quite an expensive item. They only supplied this faux leather material and the stitching obviously, and the elasticated bits that go around the outside to keep it stuck onto the dinghy. They originally asked for 650 euros, which is pretty steep considering we supplied most of the materials. Eventually I bargained him down to 580 euros, which I thought was still a steep price, but he wouldn't budge any further from that. And so when that converted to lira, it was 5,000 lira exactly. And when the guy came for payment the other day, I said, well, you know, you still haven't put the lifting strap on. He said, well, I'll knock 200 lira off for you. So the final cost was 4,800 lira. Was it worth it? Yes. Protecting the very expensive dinghy just had to be done, and these are the easiest guys to access. Was it like pulling teeth? Yes. Very, very slow to react, and not doing exactly what was asked in the first place. Would I recommend them? Probably not. Anyway, enough of me going on like a whinging pom. We've got to get back to the boat because we've got a box to open. It's day 2 of the engine strip down, and today's mission is to clean the engine and the engine bay. Now that we've removed all of the top end parts, we've got a lot more access to areas of the engine that we couldn't get to previously, and they are still coated in the oily soot from when we had the hole in the exhaust elbow. Kev's going to show me how we clean off the residue of the gasket from the cylinder head, and Kev's also going to show me how he cleans the inside of the bores. Well, it looks like that comes off quite easy, Kev. Is it, or are you putting a lot of pressure on that?
It's not too bad, this head.
Okay.
Not good. It can be a lot worse than this.
So that's just the residue from the old gasket that needs to be taken off, without scoring at all the head itself. And then, as soon as that's finished, we'll come back and show you how Kev cleans the inside of the bores. That looks like an odd place to put your cup of tea. So what is that in there then?
That's a little drop of petrol.
Petrol, okay. So you're just rubbing that petrol around the inside of the cylinder, the bore, right? Yeah. And that just cleans all the carbon off.
Yep.
Okay. So actually on the top of the piston, I can see there's a lot of gunk in there. What's the plan for getting that out of there?
Well, once we've cleaned these, the tops of the bores, then we bring the pistons up.
Right.
And then that stops anything falling down inside the cylinder head.
Right.
The bores rather, and then it's easier to clean the pistons when they're
all right.
top.
Now comes the time to bring the pistons up to the top of the bore. Kev's going to show us how we do this manually.
Right, all you need to do is just put a socket on the front pulley and turn until the pistons, the two outside ones, should be on top now.
Well, that's Kev's surgery procedures over. All that's left now is for me to clean the rest of the engine, clean the engine bay bilge, and then we wait for parts, and as the parts come to us we put the bits and pieces back on. Meanwhile, up in the cockpit, I'm once again using Ansh's toothbrush to clean up all of the bolts and everything else that came off the engine. We just received a phone call from Aidan, the mechanic, and he said, can you please come to my workshop? Hopefully he's got the gaskets, and if that is the case, then we can get the parts that have been cleaned back to the marina. We can get started on putting the engine back together. This is our cylinder head. Okay,
head core.
Cylinder head
Cylinder
core, and these are the exhaust and inlet valves for the 4 cylinders. Wow. Oh, look at that! It's so smooth. That's just amazing.
Maybe extra reserve.
Okay. So all our gaskets and O-rings.
This cylinder, this
For the valves.
valve stem.
Valve stem, yep. Okay. Oh, and we've got the turbo back as well. Ah.
Oh,
That's what a dead turbo looks like. Ooh, yes. Beautiful. Okay. One of the jobs we're getting done at Aidan's workshop is extracting the heat exchanger unit from its house here. This is the inside bit, and basically you have salt water and fresh water crossing paths with each other but never actually touching each other, and that's how you cool the engine. And here are the gaskets or O-rings that were taken out from the original one. They've probably been there for a long time, but we've got replacements for those, so we're going to swap them out for new ones. It's been a full 10 days since Kev and I dismantled the top half of the engine and got the parts to Aidan for servicing and cleaning. And today, being a Saturday and another gorgeous day here in Turkey, we've got all the parts back on the boat. Today's task, of course, is to put the cylinder head back on and torque it down to the exact specifications, which Aidan kindly printed out for us. So I'm just going to remove some doors again, and the boat is going to be explodified as we put everything back together.
I removed the doors for you.
Thank you, Admiral.
No worries, Captain. Meanwhile, I'll get on with promoting our video.
So Kev's here now, and here we are back in the engine bay. The head is nice and smooth. We're about to put the gasket on, and the gasket can really only go on one way, so you can't really bugger it up.
That's it. That's it. It's in there. Those 2 little dowels, as well as holding the gasket in place, they guide the head in place. Now that it's in place, now you can put the tappet rocker assembly on and start putting the head bolts on.
Popping those little bits of metal on top there of the valves is something that Aidan said was very, very important to remember. He was very specific about that. These are the last of the head bolts going in, and Kevin was just saying that there are quite a lot more head bolts than he's usually worked with. It's possibly because it is a turbo engine, so there's a higher compression, which means it needs more bolts to keep everything bolted together. Ah, so that snap.
Right, that's up to the first setting we've got now,
Right.
which is around about 4. Right, number 2 is opposite.
Yeah.
That's number 2. Right, now.
So this is the rocker assembly.
That's right.
Now all the head bolts are properly torqued down. We put the rocker assembly on. So we're just making sure that the cup of the push rod is sitting correctly. And now we need to torque down these bolts as well. We're now at the point where we're going to adjust the gap to specification on the rocker arms. Is that right?
Yeah. This is the one we're doing first. That's the number 1 inlet.
Right.
So we have to take it round till it's gone on its stroke. The valve will shut again, a little way past it to take it off the cam, and then we'll do the. So right, that's coming down now. That valve there now is letting in the fuel. It's coming up. That's about the top of its stroke, a little way past it. That's it. Right. So you see, there's no gap there. We need to adjust it.
Tappet gaps all perfectly at 0.2 millimeter. Now we're putting the injectors back in, and we'll get the new fuel line on there. This is the water pump, which we're now putting back onto the front end of the engine. Kev's now working with the exhaust manifold, so we've got the brand new metal exhaust manifold gasket going into place, and the exhaust manifold complete with the heat exchanger on the top of it.
Okay, that's it, that's it.
Yeah.
Drop the aft end. That's it.
Right. Okay. Right. Leave it there now for a sec. Then I can move things out of the way to get it in well.
Okay.
On it. That's it.
We just applied a little bit of grease in the groove where the rocker cover gasket goes to keep the gasket in place once we invert the rocker cover and put it back into position. We were waiting for the intake manifold gasket to come from Istanbul, but Iden said we'd be waiting for a long time because they don't have any in the country. So Iden just made one for us, and we're going to stick this bad boy on the engine this morning. It's super fiddly getting in there to get these bolts into place, but the one bolt that's going to be an absolute pain is this one right here. This one. This is where the exhaust comes out of the engine, and that bolt there, when everything else is on here with the turbo and the exhaust system on here, getting that nut onto that stud is going to be super difficult. If you remember at the beginning of this exercise, we found that these fuel return pipes were very brittle, so we've replaced them. However, this pipe is slightly bigger diameter than the original pipe, and so the original quick clips that were on here just don't fit the pipe, and we couldn't buy any of the right size locally, but we could get these hose clamps. Now that we're putting the injector hoses back on, we can see why they use the quick clips rather than these hose clamps. So we've actually had to move them around to get these injector nuts tightened up. There you can see one of the original quick clips compared to the hose clamp. Here comes the big moment. We're about to remount the turbo part, and this is challenging to say the least. So,
Right, I've got the turbo. You just guide the pipe.
So we've got the turbo housing bolted back on, and I've just injected a little bit of engine oil into this hole here because this is the oil intake feed for the turbo. And I've just got my finger down here and I'm spinning the turbo quite a few times to get that oil round the bearings of the turbo. So it's got some initial lubrication when we start the engine up. So this little portion here is a sensor that senses how much airflow is being sucked into the engine. That has something to do with being attached to the fuel system, so it kind of like says, oh, we're putting more air in, therefore we're going to need more fuel, and things adjust accordingly. Brand new gaskets in between two, all made by our mate Aiden. One thing you don't want on a job like this is any parts left over, and we had one part left over. Fortunately, it's only a hose clamp, and we know exactly where it's missing from. We're just putting that on now. Alright, here's the big moment. We have done everything we can, we've double checked everything. What we're going to do is we're just going to turn the engine over without it actually firing up, and that'll basically get some oil pumped around the system and up to the rocker cover area, and build a bit of oil pressure up. Then we're going to prime and bleed the fuel system to get rid of any air, and then once we fire it up again, she should go like a rocket. Fingers crossed.
Next week on Sailing ABC, we fire up the engine for the first time since its rebuild, and we'll also give you a breakdown of the costs involved. We'd like to welcome aboard Clive Willis, who's our latest patron. Welcome aboard, Clive. It's great to have you with us. Thanks to all of our patrons, our subscribers and followers, because you really do help us to keep afloat and to keep our journey going. We've also updated our website. It's a lot faster loading, and we've got a brand new shop which has got lots of really great gift ideas for Christmas. So check it out. The website address is on the screen right now. So until we see you next week on Sailing ABC, stay safe and healthy.